Hey guys, welcome back to The Catholic Shepherd. I am your host, Rick Desanctis. Thank you so much for tuning in once again. We've been doing these shows monthly for about a year now. Actually, last month we did this exact show. We had a little problem with it, so we're doing it again. We got with us today Jay Benjamin, an awesome family man, loves his Catholic faith. Think he's a convert to the faith as well, has children, and he's got quite the ministry going on. But I like to start off every show explaining to the audience why we're doing what we do. We do this because we want to inspire our Catholic brothers and sisters to go back to church if they're not there, to let them see what other Catholics are doing, to see what's going on within the church, with outside the church, and let everybody know that we all have the same issues, the same problems, and the same questions. So I like to back everything up with a book called The Catholic Catechism. Let me grab that. So this book right here is called The Catechism of the Catholic Church. Very thick book. It's basically the Bible on what we do. It's not the Bible. It's the Bible of, we'll call it the handbook of the Catholic Church. Everything in here is based on the Bible and the history of the church. Very big, as you can see. And you don't want to read it like a novel. You want to go to the index and you want to pick a word. So the word that you pick could be anything. You know, you're curious about marriage, you're curious about divorce, you're curious about certain sins, or why we do what we do in church. Go to the Catechism, you can find out. But long story short, these shows have been inspiring people, and I can tell you why they've been inspiring people. It's good for other people to see Catholic people sharing their faith, because you feel kind of alone once in a while. Had a couple of guys out there call me up and go, you know, I'm kind of excited to be a Catholic because of what you're doing. You know, we're very raw here. We're not Fox, we're not CNN, we're nothing big. We're nice and, you know, we keep it simple here. And I think that's why it's working. So if you like what we're doing, share it on YouTube or whatever. Check out our website, catholicshepherd.com, and you can see everything that we're doing there. So guys, stay tuned. We'll be right back with Jason Benjamin. I'm super psyched. Guys, welcome back to The Catholic Shepherd. Hope you enjoyed that quick monologue. So today I have with me a guy by the name of Jay Benjamin. Now, we had filmed this about 2 months ago. For whatever reason, it didn't work out. I guess God didn't want that issue out there. This one's going to be much better. I can feel it. Actually, I got to know Jay a little bit better over the past couple of months, so maybe that's the answer. So with me today, I have Mr. Jay Benjamin. What's up, my brother?
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, good to be here. So yeah, we did the show before.
Yeah.
I've gotten to know you, so now I really know you. So I'm going to ask you tough questions this time. I'm only kidding.
Okay.
I'm not going to put you on the spot. So Jay is a brother. He's a Catholic guy. I call him a brother because we're now friends. We're not physically related. We do a couple of little ministries together, and he's got a lot going on in his life. As always, what I like to do is I like to start at the beginning and say, okay, when you were young, were you a Catholic? Did it start that way? Did you believe in God? We'll go there. Let's go to your childhood. Where were you?
Yeah, okay, so it was baptized Catholic. But growing up, I never attended, CCD or anything like that. But I always had a belief in God, even from a very, very young age. Not really coming from a devout family or anything like that, but there was a belief in God, and I remember learning the Our Father. My sister taught me the Our Father young, but I would say that would be the extent of any type of prayer or real faith.
Sure.
It was just prayer when I really felt like I needed something. God, please, help me in any way you can. Just very simple like that, but that would be the extent of it,
Yeah, so as a child, like any other child, we start out, we say our basic prayers. Maybe an Our Father, maybe a God help, pray for
Exactly,
mom and dad. Yeah. All right, so you grew up in New England. You're self-employed right now.
Yep.
You're married, you have kids.
Married, yep. I got one daughter, she's eight.
Yeah.
And then I have another child on the way.
On the way, and you're going to find out tomorrow if it's a boy or girl.
Tonight, yeah, we're actually going to find out.
Yeah.
If it's a boy or girl.
So I want to get there after, but I want to go back and find out, we all go through struggles in life. We go through crisis in faith, kind of happens. So when you were growing up, were you a Catholic?
No.
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 What
Not a
denomination?
practicing Catholic.
Okay.
So definitely had a difficult childhood, and there's a lot of trauma in my early childhood. So really kind of growing up was a challenge, and I didn't enter into the Catholic faith until I was actually in high school.
Well, wait, before you get there, I don't want to rush into it. What was going on? What was your faith? What were you doing, or were you doing it? Was there any organized religion?
No, not at all.
So
no.
what did your life look like prayer-wise? What was your relationship with God, if any? And if there wasn't, that's okay too.
Yeah,
Where
I
were
would
you?
say, like I was saying, there really wasn't much of one, no.
So you were just kind of going through life.
Going through life. Yep.
You knew
dealing
that you may or may not have known there was a God. You prayed, hoping that there was a God.
Right.
So you had
exactly.
hope.
Yeah.
All right. So you continue, and you had a troubled childhood, as we were saying, a little.
Yeah, difficult childhood. Yep. Came from a broken home. I had a father. He passed away at a young age.
Wow.
Didn't really know too much about him. I had a stepfather who was, was abusive, alcoholic, and so I was really had a lot of pain. A lot of anger and frustration, kind of growing up. And it carried into my adolescent years. Definitely had some my share of difficulty with school and difficulty with authority and stuff like that. So it kind of played itself out definitely into my early teens. I
don't want to say I love hearing that, but I love hearing that. And the reason I love hearing that is because I know who you are today, which we will get into. I didn't know it was that crazy. We had briefly talked. So you're going through your adolescent years, and you get into high school, and you get a little bit wild, I guess is what you're saying.
Oh, yeah.
You get a little bit nuts. And I want to go into that if you don't mind.
No, absolutely.
Because I think that's powerful. It's kind of good for conversion. I like to have on average guys, and that's what you are. I consider myself an average guy. We're just a couple of buffoons trying to make it in this world,
yeah.
All right, so you're in high school. When does a transition start to happen, or does it not, or does it get really bad?
I definitely had my moments, but I would say, I didn't really experience a real darkness probably to my early 20s. So, I kind of struggled my way through high school and stuff, really lost in a lot of ways. But I definitely had this longing for God, So, like I said, when I was in high school, I entered the RCIA program.
RCIA is the program that brings people into the Catholic Church. For those of you who don't know, rite of Christian initiation, I think it means. So, so people, when you're interested in coming into the Catholic Church, you have to go through that program. Continue.
But I thinking back now, and I'm sure it was through my baptism. Really, I belong to Christ. From that moment. So I always remember too having this deep affection for Christ. I remember when I was, about 8 or 9, wanting a crucifix.
So you knew who he was?
I knew who he was, yeah, and I knew that there was really something special about Christ crucified on the cross. Not knowing what it was, I just, someone asked me what I wanted for my, 8th or 9th birthday, and I said, I'd really love a crucifix. So that, I definitely see, looking back now, in hindsight, that desire for God, and I definitely experienced that in high school. I had people close to me that were Catholic, and I was definitely curious about the faith. I knew that there was something really special about it. Having been to a couple of Catholic churches, even just for, my sister's wedding, and I was part of the wedding, and I was in this cathedral, and I remember just being in awe, and feeling something so special about the Catholic Church.
Yeah. You didn't know what it was. It just felt right.
100%, yeah, exactly.
A lot of people, people who don't understand the Catholic Church, they walk into a Catholic church, and or better yet, they'll go to Rome, and they'll walk into the Vatican, and there's 2 comments: what a lot of waste on money, and wow, the grandeur of this. And you can't put the 2 together, but there is a lot of money there. We all know that there is a lot of money, but we're doing it to glorify God. At least we're trying to. And yes, it should go to the poor and whatnot. But I think a friend of ours, John Howell, told me one time, when you look at the outside of a Catholic church and you see the stained glass windows, it makes no sense. But then when you get inside, it kind of like, oh, I get what's going on in here.
Yeah.
Can I ask you, I want to go back for a second.
Sure.
Were you baptized a Catholic, or was it just another denomination?
No, it was Catholic.
Oh, so you were
Catholic.
already, you were good to
Oh, yeah.
go. You were
Yep.
given to Jesus as a
Yep.
young child. For those of you who don't realize this, or if you're not a Catholic, when you're baptized, you're giving, the parents are basically saying you belong to God now.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want any evil to ever have dominion over. You know, there's always discussions out there. You Catholics, you know, why do you baptize your children? Why don't you wait until you can choose? Well, we don't want the enemy to ever have dominion over
Right.
our children, so we baptize
Yeah.
the youth. So you were baptized in the Catholic Church.
Mm-hmm.
So you're in high school. Starts to get a little bit crazy, starting to get dark now. And dark how? What does that even mean? What's dark mean?
Well, I think definitely, you know, I was lost, you know, in a lot of ways, and just not really having any type of real, you know, male, not having a male role model in any way, not having a father figure in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely took its toll on me because I was just exposed to the world and the things of the world. You know, and we talk about, you know, now being a Christian, being, you know, in the world, but not of this world, you know.
Right.
So I just kind of really, I was struggling with, you know, a lot of sin, you know, in my teenage years, really separated from.
Not to put you on the spot,
Yeah.
but a lot of people don't know what sin is.
Okay.
Because they think, and I'm not trying to make you go there, and if you're uncomfortable, don't.
No, it's fine.
People don't understand certain things and why it would be a sin. And, you know, is there certain issues that you got caught up in? Was it, you know, because you said something earlier, you're trying to seek something. And we always say there's a hole inside of us that needs to be filled. It's called a God hole. And we fill it with garbage,
Yeah.
sex, drugs, rock and roll, whatever you want to call it. We fill it with things. Where did you go? Like, what's your sin? What's going on there?
Yeah, and that was my experience.
Same stuff I'm saying.
Yeah, so, you know, sin is really, so it's anything that separates, sin is what separates us from God, you know, darkens the intellect, you know, and the will. And it hurts us, you know, so now looking back, I fully, you know, understand that, you know, the sin that, you know, I was committing and living in really had spiritual, psychological, you know, emotional, and even physical consequences, you know, and I started to experience that. And now looking back, you know, now I know what that was.
Yeah.
But yeah, just doing whatever I want, you know, alcohol, you know, drugs and things like that. Definitely was just, you know, the temptation
Yep.
was there, and I fell into the temptation, and really started to see the, you know, the devastating
Dark side of it,
consequences of.
And I'm sure your
those
friends
things.
were immersed in it with you, and it was just one big crazy time, right?
Yeah, well, it says, you know, in the Bible, you know, sin is fun for a season, and the pleasure was just temporary, and then I started to experience the consequences of it, you know, like you know, addiction and things like that, which led into my early 20s, and that's where I fell into a lot of darkness.
Mm-hmm. All right. So at this point, I want to get out of the darkness.
Mm-hmm.
You're going dark. You're falling into sin. You kind of don't know where you're at. You don't know where you're going. You know there's a God, but what's the point? When do things start to change? At which point does something happen?
Yeah. So so I did enter the faith in high school, and so I was a practicing Catholic. You know, just doing the best I could. And I was even a Eucharistic minister at one point, actually. And I just loved the Catholic faith. There's something really so special about it. I knew in my heart that it was true. I knew, I just loved everything. I loved everything about just the Mass and everything.
Didn't you convert to Catholicism?
So, yeah, I would say I converted. Yeah, converted into the Catholic faith.
Or reverted because you were baptized Catholic.
That's true, right.
Okay.
That's another way to put it.
All right.
So, reverted. But I was really struggling with the ways of the world, you know, and just falling into the, you know, sin of, you know, just greed and lust and chasing, you know,
All the bad things.
the pleasures of the flesh, if you know, if you will. And so that's why I love the story of the prodigal son. You know, I was definitely in a place where I knew that I couldn't live the way I was living in the Father's house.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I wanted what God was giving me and all the gifts, but I said, you know, I'm going to take these gifts. I'm going to take what you've given me, and I'm going to go. Because I knew in my heart that I couldn't, you know, I was really struggling wanting to be Catholic and having this desire to be in relationship with God, but chase the things of the world. You know, so I definitely distanced myself from the church. I was trying to go to Mass, but I was really struggling with the way I was living my life. You know, I knew that the things I was doing was wrong. And then that's what led me, into a lot of darkness in my early 20s. And then really what brought me back to the faith was meeting my wife, getting married in the Catholic Church, going through the pre-Cana, and understanding how serious, the sacrament of marriage was, understanding how important the sacraments are, in the church. And really, God was fulfilling my desire for family that I never really had growing up. So all these things kind of came to fruition, and I said, and it really instilled a lot of trust in the Catholic faith, and that we have the sacraments, and I'm like, this is really what I want. This is.
Can I ask you a question? Did you explore anywhere else? Did you go into any other churches? Because you know what? I went through a crisis during my life. I had gotten a divorce. I ended up getting an annulment and getting married again. But during that time, I was going to churches everywhere, and including, non-Catholic churches. And there is some truth in every church.
Sure.
There was something missing everywhere I went.
Yeah.
I ended up, obviously, back in the Catholic Church, which I'll get into later. Did you go through any of that? Like, maybe I should go here. Why am I a Catholic? Did you go through any of that? Or it just always felt right?
Yeah, no, I did. So it was interesting, and I've spoken on this before. I always had this inner skeptic. I think we all do. I think we all have this doubt within us, and I think that it's actually an important thing because it keeps us just from jumping into anything blindly. So doubt can be a good thing because when we have questions and we have doubt, we seek the answers, and we have a desire. I think every human has a desire for truth, for justice, for purpose. And that was definitely part of my journey for sure. So to answer your question, as I got older, I wasn't half the skeptic I was when I was younger. So I had a lot of questions. Yeah, and I wouldn't say I explored other denominations. So getting back to, meeting my wife, Erica, getting married in the church was really the beginning of my journey really back to the Catholic faith. And I think what, as time went on, things would happen, like the birth of my daughter, really, and taking her baptism seriously. And it was all part of my journey, really back into, really just hook, line, and sinker, right back into the Catholic faith, 100%. It was definitely that, through the sacraments. But I experienced some more darkness, in my mid-20s.
Technically, basically slipped.
Yeah, so a lot of anxiety,
Yeah.
and just stress, things of the world, really just trying to run the show myself, putting myself in a position to get hurt, putting myself in a position for failure, and really not knowing it. But God had revealed these things to me, through time. But I'm in a 12-step program, so going through the steps really gave me the spiritual experience I needed to get back into a relationship with Christ. That was really kind of, I'd say, the biggest thing that brought me back into the church.
All right, so let's tell the audience, tell me some of the things that you love about the Catholic Church. Rather than say what we don't like about what's not in the church, give me some of the real strong things that you just, I have to do this, or I have to do that, or I like to do this. Why are you a Catholic? Other than you feel it, what is it that you just love about it that's going on in your world, in your church?
Yeah, well, it's the fullness of truth.
Okay.
It's the fullness of truth and grace necessary for my salvation, but everyone's salvation. And kind of going back to kind of exploring other denominations to a certain extent, never attending like any other services and stuff, but I did have, questions. And so I started listening to a lot of Catholic apologists and things like that, a lot of Fulton Sheen. Fulton Sheen was just a pivotal player in, and just, he was like the cement, and the foundation of the faith for me. I love how he just incorporated, philosophy, theology, even sometimes politics into his evangelization. So he was huge. But listening to a lot of Fulton Sheen, and then, exploring other truths. And one thing that kind of hit me just like a ton of bricks You know, I think Christ was really, really just speaking to me directly. You know, once you step out of the Catholic Church, there's so many other denominations.
It's like, I think there's over 20,000.
You don't know which direction to go in.
You don't.
You really don't.
Can,
So
you
once
can, and again, we're not insulting a non-Catholic, but you're basically, you have opinion, and when you have opinion, and every time you have an opinion, you can have an opinion of that opinion. So the second you step out, you know, we say this over and over, the word Protestant means to protest what always was. It's not an insult. It's just a word that was formed. I'm saying this for the audience's sake, because there's a lot of people out there that like to challenge me. It's, you know, all Christians, we're all Christians. We're brothers and sisters, absolutely. We like to say we have the fullness of truth in the Catholic Church. So I like to add in that little interlude always because it's important. We're not trying to be offensive. But there's some rich parts of the church. Adoration, communion, confession, all these things that people challenge and they don't know why. Do you go to confession?
Oh, yeah.
How often do you go?
Yep. I'd say I average about once a month.
Once a month. And the church prescribes at least once a year. I'm assuming you go to Mass once a week?
Yep.
That's
Go to Mass every
prescribed.
week, yeah.
You know, I saw something the other day, forget the priest's name. Someone asked him, what does it mean to be a practicing Catholic? And a practicing Catholic is somebody who goes to Mass every week, someone who goes to Mass on holy days, someone who receives communion. These are basic tenets of the faith that you have to do. And we didn't make this up. Jesus says it himself. Unless you eat my body and drink my blood, you have no life within you. He didn't make that up. It's not a saying.
Right.
It's a fact. So let me get back on track. So you're in love with the church. You're there.
Love with the church, yeah.
Fulton Sheen was one of your inspirations.
Fulton Sheen, yeah. Big
What
time.
other things do you like to do within the church that kind of keep you on fire and lit up?
I'm involved with a couple different ministries, but one is it's ACTS. It's along the lines of stands for Adoration, Community, Theology, and Service. It's along the lines of a Curcio, from what I understand.
Yep.
And so I've been involved with that for a few years. So we have these men's retreats. And that was another thing. Right around the same time, I really started to explore all these different things. And I went on an ACTS retreat, and I had this very personal encounter with Christ. And I got to a point where it would have taken more faith to deny him than it would be to accept him as my Lord and Savior.
Wow.
Because, you know, I think one of the biggest things for me is not only did Christ reveal himself as God, you know, he proved it in his ministry,
Right.
performing the miracles that we read about in the Gospels. And I got to a point where I could not deny Christ anymore. And I surrendered to him, you know, completely and entirely, accepted the teachings of the Catholic Church. And I think one of the things that really kind of was just huge for me was the sacraments. You know, we talked about confession, we talked about the sacrament of marriage, baptism. And that's exactly what's missing in our society. If you look in our culture, what is under attack? You know, the sacrament of marriage, you know, the breakdown of the family. The church is really the only institution that I see that lifts marriage, elevates it to this sacred bond between man and woman, which it is. You know, it's just such a beautiful thing to bring up, you know, children in that in the Catholic Church. And just, I love confession. You know what I mean? Just to go, and I never realized how important it was to me. Yeah, you confess your sins and yeah, the things you do wrong, or you know, your character defects or whatever. But at the end, if you have a contrite heart and you are really sorry for what you have done, to hear a priest in persona Christi,
In the person
right,
of Jesus, yep.
to say,
Your
sins are forgiven.
Yeah.
You are forgiven.
Yeah, amen.
You can't go anywhere else in the world.
No.
Nowhere. And hear that. No other religion, no other institution.
No.
You know, and I think that was one of the most beautiful things that Christ did is, I mean, he said, you know, which is easier, to get up and walk, you know, when he performed that miracle, and or to say your sins are forgiven.
Yeah.
And that's just it, you know, to hear, you know, you are forgiven is just, and you walk out of there and you know, in your heart that you are forgiven because you feel God's mercy. And that's what God is. He's mercy, you know, and he is love. And ultimately, he wants what's best through us, and we can find that through his son, Jesus Christ.
Let me interrupt. We always end up touching on confession on this show, and it's a hot button issue for non-Catholics. I don't need confession. I can talk to Jesus directly. Absolutely you can. It's a gift. There are a lot of beautiful, precious gifts within the Catholic Church that people think are just crazy, made-up, concocted things. They're not. They're biblical, and I could get into them. I won't now. But another friend of mine, no, it's the same friend, his name's John, said to me one time, we got to get everybody to go to confession. I'm like, why, John? He goes, because if they go to confession, their sins are forgiven. Once their sins are forgiven, they're going to know it and feel it. They're going to want more. They're going to seek the Eucharist, which is technically God, and they're going to want to go to Mass on Sundays. Now, I say this a lot, especially on my own little private YouTube videos, that either God exists or he doesn't. I believe he does. Let's just for a second assume that God exists. And he gave us this gift, and it was in a piece of bread. Let's assume that this is just hearsay. Mm-hmm. If it's true, and this bread actually is God, wouldn't you want to consume God every week? Yes. So we as Catholics wholeheartedly believe, and I know you would agree with this, that we are truly consuming the body and blood of Jesus Christ when we go to Mass. And you should do that in a state of grace, which is why we go to confession. And again, this to an outsider sounds cockamamie. It's insane. There's an explanation for all of it.
Sure.
Once again, if you get confused, you can learn a little bit more in the Catechism, as I always refer to. But there is an explanation. We didn't just make things up, and it didn't just fall from the sky. There's a lot of common sense reasons, and it's backed up by Scripture. I'm sorry to take your time, but I felt the audience needs to hear that, because even Catholics don't know their faith.
Yeah.
Non-Catholics, especially, but some Catholics just don't know their faith. All right, so I want to touch on one thing. We have a couple of minutes left. You and another buddy of ours, Mike, and another buddy, his brother, Artie, went out last month. I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but it inspired me. It moved me to tears. It actually inspired me. You guys decided that you were going to wake up one day, make a bunch of sandwiches, buy some socks, and walk into downtown Boston and feed the homeless. What was that all about? And how did it go? You have about 2 minutes. So
yeah, so I definitely have to say, Mike really felt the calling to serve. Those.
You guys woke up one morning and said, "I'm going to do this," right?
Yeah.
So you packed a bunch of sandwiches. You get into Boston. When you're downtown, how do you just walk up to somebody? Are they drug addicts? Are they alcoholics? Are they just homeless? Are they crazy? And I'm not being disrespectful, but what did you walk up to?
So we saw people in need. People panhandling in the street and stuff like that, and we just approached them and just say, "Hey." Just struck up, just a regular conversation like you would anybody.
And say what?
And just say, hey, how you guys doing? You hungry by any chance? Can we get you something to drink? Would you like a cold water?
And you just fed them right up the street. How was the response?
Unbelievable.
Give me like one person. You walked up to a person, and what was their response?
Just, I think, right away you can kind of tell the people that are open to conversation or just, taking what you have to offer. Yeah. But I was like totally blown away at the people who were open to prayer, already had this idea of God, and just were really just kind of receptive.
Yeah.
To a street ministry.
Super grateful though.
Very grateful, and it was so it was unlike what I thought it was going to be. I thought that there would be some resistance or anything like that. There really wasn't any of that. Yeah. No, not much.
Mike said to me that the biggest item was obviously the sandwiches, but socks.
Socks,
I never thought that. So people who are homeless, and this goes for you people out there. If you ever feel like getting crazy and really serving Jesus in a crazy way, make a little care package. So we made them now. I have a whole bunch of them in my office. I don't go out like these guys do, but I want to inspire you, the audience, that, you can serve Jesus in simple ways. Make a little package, put some vitamins in there, put some deodorant in there, some socks, a little sandwich, and just walk up to someone. That's pretty much what you guys did.
That's what we did, yeah. And it was just really just being of service.
I think that's awesome.
To those in need.
Yeah.
And offering them prayer.
Good stuff.
And love,
So, well, listen, a show ran by again. I love this guy. I love what he's about. I love that you're so humble and honest about who you are. You're a good Catholic man, and I can't thank you enough for who you are and what you do. So Once
Thanks again for having me.
Lots of
Appreciate it. Thank you.
luck and blessings as you move forward. Thank
you.
you so
Same to
much.
you.
Once again, Jay Benjamin. Guys, go to CatholicShepherd.com. You can see all of our shows. We will see you soon.